Hi, my name's Craig West. I'm the CEO and founder of Succession Plus. We are the largest business succession and exit planning advisory firm in Australia. We've been working with business owners in the mid-market to help them maximise business value and achieve a successful exit for over 15 years. During that time, we've learned a lot, we've seen a lot, and hopefully we can share with you some of our experience, some of our knowledge, and the intellectual property we use to help business owners work through what is probably the most important focus area for an owner to work on. How do I maximize the value of my business and achieve a successful exit? Hopefully this webinar helps you understand some of those key issues you should be thinking about as an owner and helping you maximize the value of your business and achieve a successful exit. This webinar is all about beginning with insights. There's a book called It All Begins with Insights that I've written to guide you through this process. If you haven't seen it or read it, download it online, get a copy sent out to you, and we can show you why it all begins with insights. The first question this asks is, how much is your business worth? Do you actually know? And more importantly than just that question, do you know why? Why is your business worth 4 million, not 3? Or 4 million, not 5? And ultimately, what can you do about that? My very strong view is the market doesn't control the value of your business. You do. And you can do something about it. But firstly, you need to know where you're at and where you're starting from. The way that we do that using our capitalized software platform is a business insights report. It's a deep dive analysis into every aspect of your business. It includes a couple of key things: economic factors, interest rates, inflation, trade, those sorts of things. Secondly, industry variables. Which industry are you in? How risky is it? What's the competition look like? What are the barriers to entry? What's the likely growth prospects going forward? Obviously, a large part of the report is financial analysis on your business. How much profit do you make? What cash flow do you generate? What risks are there in the business from a non-financial point of view? And ultimately, we want to look at how attractive, how ready is this business for a sales, succession, or exit event? Now, to do that, there's a couple of key aspects of the report. We start with a review of your structure. Who owns which assets? What is the tax implications of that ownership? How well are those assets protected? And should we or could we do anything about that structure leading up to a succession or exit event? Then we get into the financial analysis. We create what's called a normalized profit and loss. In other words, we take out all the one-off, unusual, or non-business items and come up with the real underlying profit performance of your business. We also break the balance sheet into two aspects: finance, or how's the business funded, and operations. How does the business work day to day in terms of cash and debtors and creditors and those sorts of things? Then we start to look at detailed analysis. And important to understand, this business insights report is done from a buyer or investor or lender's lens. How would a buyer look at your business? What analysis would they do? That's what this report's designed to tell you. So we start with a trend analysis. This example that you're looking at here is actually a very good example. It represents steady but consistent growth over 4 or 5 years. That's what buyers want to see. They don't want to see huge variations. 1 year's great, next year's not good, next year's really good again. We're all over the place, and that makes our earnings really unpredictable and therefore quite risky. The next thing we look at, and you'll see here, we've got a traffic light system where green's good, red's bad, orange is somewhere in the middle. You can see straight away here how you're performing. In this example, this business is performing particularly well. Their financial scorecard is A, nearly as good as it's going to get. So we know financially it's performing well. We can see a couple of red crosses there, so we know there's perhaps a few areas of underperformance. We can look at those later. We also then start to dig down into the detailed financial analysis. We're looking here at the ratio between fixed and variable costs. We're also looking, importantly, at the break-even point. Are we there? Are we near there? Are we way above it already? In this example, we are. We've also looked at a safety margin. Down the bottom, you can see 71%. Now, as a safety margin, we're typically looking for 10. So 71% is a great result. What that means is, theoretically, this business could afford to drop turnover by 71%. It would still be okay. Now, I wouldn't recommend you do that, and that's not what this is saying. What it's saying is there's a big buffer here, and that's important. Then we look at cash flow. Every buyer or investor or lender wants to know about your cash flow. What does the free cash flow look like? Because that's my return. Am I going to get repaid for my loan? As a buyer, if I pay $5 million for this business, what's my return look like over time? Then we look at a couple of other elements. The first one is sustainable growth rate. Now, a lot of owners don't understand what this means. This figure tells me this business can afford to grow at 37% per year based on its current debt to equity structure. In other words, it can grow at 37% without raising capital or equity, without putting more money in by the owners, and without borrowing additional debt. That's an important number to know. Secondly, we now look at other metrics like industry benchmarking. Buyers will always want to know, are you performing better or worse or the same as your competitors? And you can see here, we start to compare things like revenue per person, wages as a percentage of revenue. What's our total overhead cost per person? Is that better or worse than competitors in my industry? This is an engineering firm. In fact, the benchmarking here in these key ratios analysis is really quite good. We're overperforming in nearly every single area. But when we get into the detail and look at our benchmarking comparison here, you can actually see that Smith Engineering has a cost of sales of 48.9%, whereas the industry average is 47.5%. Big deal. It's only 1.4%, but it's 1.4% of $9.7 million. In this example, it's $200,000. It's a lot of money that's being left on the table. On the right-hand side, you can see a profit gap analysis. Profit gap simply means that $200,000 should be in the owner's pocket, but it's not. Even more importantly than that, it has a big impact on the valuation because that $200,000 multiplied by whatever our multiple is now becomes a value gap, not just a profit gap. And that's important. The next thing we focus on is non-financial performance. And as per this example, lots of business owners struggle here. Understanding how your business operates. What are the risks? What are the structures that are in place? We can see here some glaring issues. Firstly, the score overall is E+, which is just about as bad as it gets. Despite the business performing well financially, it's got some serious issues. All of these red crosses are risk areas. They're all areas where, as a buyer or a lender or an investor, I'm starting to get concerned about how sustainable the earnings are. What this table tells me is we don't have KPIs and job descriptions. We don't have a performance management system. Our REM strategy is not working well. We don't have a functional management team. We don't have stability in our senior management, and a whole stack of other areas where this business could be and should be improved. Secondly, we talk about strategic value. Have we got this business positioned well for strategic buyers to approach? And the simple answer here, looking at this screen, is no, we don't. We cannot possibly be ready to attract a strategic buyer. We don't have our intellectual assets or property. We don't have our intangible assets documented. We don't have export potential. Our strategic IP is not clear. Therefore, this is unlikely to attract a strategic buyer. Now, all of that analysis, roughly 60 pages of it, comes together in one page, and that is the business valuation. So you can see here, the model that we use looks at historical earnings, typically over 3 or even 4 years, and it looks at forward earnings, in other words, the budget for next financial year. It takes all of that and works out what's called the weighted average of earnings. And that figure then helps us work out what is our enterprise or goodwill value of this particular business. Now, that's a useful number. We now know this business is actually worth $7 million in this particular example. That's an important number to know and understand. What we're now going to look at, I think, is probably the most important page out of all 60, and that is the value potential calculation. In other words, we know the business is worth 7.3 million, but we also know now it should be or could be worth as much as 12 or 13 million. And why isn't it? The report tells you all the areas, every single one of those red crosses contributes to why it's not worth that much money. If you look at the table across the top, This is not about growing revenue or overall growth. The revenue doesn't change in this calculation. What changes in the first two columns is our profitability. So the first column represents where we're at today. The second column assumes we close that profit gap, that $200,000 that we identify. If we fix that, we actually add almost $1 million to our valuation. The next page assumes we can really fine-tune the financial performance and get to best in class. And if we do that, we're now at $8.8 million. We've actually picked up $1.5 million in valuation just from doing that. We haven't changed anything else. We've just fine-tuned the profit. Where the big impact comes is now if we can improve the multiple, because the multiple hasn't changed in the first three columns. What now changes is our multiple. And the way that we do that is reduce risk. The foundation scorecard is all about risk. Go and close all those gaps, fix all those issues, resolve all those risks, and you'll find the red crosses turn to green ticks, the score changes, and the algorithm then calculates automatically the valuation increase. In this example, it's more than $2 million. Ultimately, working through this process is all about value acceleration. How do I improve, maximize, accelerate, if you like, the value of my business and walk away with $7 million, but 11, 12, or 13 if we are to achieve the value potential? Now, the only thing left to do then is answer one question. How do we do that? This 21-step implementation roadmap is part of the Business Insights report. It'll map out for you all the things you need to do to close that value gap, to go literally from 7 million to 11, 12, or 13. That's what owners need to focus on. As a business owner, you should be thinking about, how do I maximize the value of the business leading up to an exit? And the Business Insights report will show you where you're at today, what the value gap is, and ultimately map out for you all of the steps you need to take in the process to close that value gap and maximize the equity value in your business. Thanks for joining me for that session. I hope you found it really interesting and informative and hopefully helpful for you in your business. If you want to find out more, there's a stack of resources available on our website. That includes white papers, ebooks, and other webinars like the one you've just seen. Also, feel free to reach out. I've got a team of advisors who are experts in the various areas of business succession and exit planning. They're here to help you. Feel free to reach out, touch base with one of my team. I'm looking forward to being able to help you maximize the value of your business and achieve a successful exit.